Okay, so do you remember this, or this, or even this, and eventually this, what we all know today? So let's rewind about 20 years, and this is a series I'm calling Let Me Explain, and I'm here to explain. So when iTunes and the iPod were kind of born together in 2001, what we saw was you plugged in your iPod and you took a CD that you bought at the store and you burned it and you put that music onto the iPod. That was really all it was. And then there was the piracy of taking songs, downloading them, and throwing those onto the iPod. But what we saw early on was that the iPod and really this whole digital era of music lacked content. And content is where the record labels will come into play. At the start, piracy was the only way. We all knew what LimeWire was, what Rhapsody was, all those things. You could just download songs, but there was an organizational piece that was gone. Besides the fact that it was illegal at the time, and still is to this day, we lacked the actual artists, we lacked the organizational of songs, we lacked the cover art, we lacked all that stuff that we love to see today. The iPod was a way where we could put hundreds of thousands of songs right in our pocket. I mean, we all remember the Steve Jobs keynote when he pulled out the iPod out of his pocket. It was the smallest device we've seen that wasn't a CD player. And we know what CD players and the early MP3 players had. It had what Apple tends to always fix, a bad UI and just a bad user experience. So the record labels had a real issue on their hands. It was basically the record labels versus piracy. And really what it was the record labels versus some 15, 16-year-old downloading a crappy version of a song and throwing it on LimeWire for hundreds of millions to download. That's really all they had. And there needed to be a solution. And there needed to be a solution that, let's say, was an alternative, but a legal alternative. And that's where Apple comes into place with what they would eventually come together with the iTunes Store. Steve Jobs early on went to all of these record labels and said, I have an idea. I have this iPod, I have this Mac, and this iTunes, and I want to put a store together. But that's something he couldn't do on his own. He needed the record label buy-in. He needed basically the music. He needed the content. I mean, Steve Jobs was passionate about music. He thought that music was a creative art and that the creators of that art should really get the respect they deserve and be paid for what they've put their heart and soul into. Steve Jobs really stood on the fact that music should not be stolen. And that goes back to like if Apple's UI was stolen back in the day, if the iOS was stolen, if the Mac OS was stolen, if all of those things were stolen, we wouldn't be where we were today and it wouldn't be iconic to the Apple brand. So we all know Steve Jobs for what he was. When he wanted something, he went and got it. He had all these extravagant meetings where he'd meet with heads at record labels and he'd show them how seamless the iPod to Mac connection was. And it really was that seamless. And his idea was if he shows how seamless it is, it'll blow the minds of those people in the record labels in charge of making decisions. So that's when the buy-in started to happen. When people started to buy into what the iPod was and the seamless connection, that's when he introduced, let's start selling songs for 99 cents. 70 cents goes to the record label and the rest goes to Apple. And with that, there's an alternative to piracy. You can buy the song. And like he said in the keynote, it was less than going to Starbucks and buying a latte. Basically, it was simple. The artist won and Apple won. Everyone in their parties won. But then the pushback started to happen. And the pushback started to happen when record labels would say, well, artists make these albums. They make 13, 14, 15 songs, and they're supposed to be heard in the entirety. And that's what people pay for. There's about 3 or 4 hit radio songs that come out that people want to hear, and then the rest they listen to. And Steve Jobs kind of came back with, well, the alternative is they go onto a pirated website, an illegal website like LimeWire, and they still download the songs they want to hear. Where this alternative, you can buy the album for whatever amount, or you can buy the song for 99 cents. And then deeper in conversation, the pushback became from the record labels. Well, the record labels, the songs and the albums, that's what's selling the iPod, so we think we should get a cut of the iPod. And as Jobs agreed, that was never going to happen. But it was ultimately a good proposition of trying to get some revenue into Apple's products. So 2003, the iTunes Store was born, and at its birth, there was about 200,000 songs available to download and purchase. Before the launch, Steve Jobs met with some of the biggest artists in the game, and he kind of showed them what the future was going to be. He showed them the seamless connection from iPod to Mac and how the iTunes Store worked, and ultimately had a buy-in from a lot of people. From Jimmy Iovine, this guy's unique. People like Dr. Dre said, finally, someone got it right. As the iPod sold and songs were sold, ultimately it was growing the revenue of the Macintosh simply because iTunes and the iPod were only coded to work on a Mac computer. It was not open to Windows, and in the mind of a lot, it was something that we saw never going to go to Windows. But about later on that year, they wrote the code and the iPod and the iTunes Store was then available on Windows. So as the iPod grows, let's grow this channel by hitting that like button and hitting that subscribe button and growing this community like the iPod grew. And then like all the Apple products we knew, eventually the iPod kept growing and growing and growing year after year, getting better within a smaller footprint and a more user-friendly interface. In 2005, we had the iPod Shuffle, and that was the first time anyone really saw that shuffle feature, and people were trying to figure out how the shuffle worked, which is something we see on the iPhone today. And eventually we had the iPod Video, being able to play video. We had the iPod Nano, which was just that small footprint. And then eventually the iPod Touch, which kind of revolutionized the whole touchscreen movement. By 2007, the iPod was half of Apple's revenue. And by 2011, there was 225 million active users on iTunes, which basically would build Apple and put them in a position to be at the front of the digital interface of music for really the years to come. So with all of that, we had all the iTunes, we had all the buying music, we had the whole iPod, we had the introduction of the iPhone and all of that stuff. And then that's when the subscription base came in. We saw Spotify with a subscription based, you pay X amount of money a month and you really get it at just a touch away. And then Apple Music came into play, same thing, monthly subscription, all the music you want at a touch away. And that was really the new way of things. The iTunes Store is still here, but now you're seeing this music-based subscription services that are really paving the way of what we see now. And it started with Spotify, started with Apple Music, and then we had Jay-Z releasing stuff on his own music streaming services like Tidal. Or you see Kanye West a couple of weeks ago releasing Donda 2 on his STEM device. It's a way of being able to just take your music and the art from the creator and throwing it on your own streaming device, and then, I mean, people will buy it. People will buy into it. And that's really paved off of the early days of Apple. I mean, Apple really changed music for all of us. They changed the way we consume music. I mean, every Friday I go to my phone and I either go to New Music Daily or New Music Friday to see what came out. That was something where you'd have to go to Best Buy and pick up a local CD. I mean, Apple really started that revolution of this new music era way back in 2003. And then ultimately it was changed for the record labels. It was changed for the artists to get the credit they deserve and the revenue they deserve. And really changed for like the accessories, like Apple with spatial audio, with Dolby Atmos, with basically the whole AirPods line. It really shifted in a way where over the air we can have all of these thousands of millions of songs. And I mean, music's something we all do on a daily basis. We listen to it when we drive, when we're on a walk, when we're on a run, when we just need to cool down. We're all listening to music all the time, and we're listening to it in such an easy way. So with that, I hope you enjoyed this video. Subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I'm gonna go listen to some music. Peace.